who said an engine had to be normal. Throughout history, there have been engineers so crazy that they put turbines, pistons, oval shapes, airplane engines, and all kinds of configurations. No one understood them, but they worked. Motorcycles that looked like they came out of a secret lab and defied all logic. Today, you're going to discover the motorcycles with the weirdest engines ever made. Machines as strange as they are legendary. Number 10. Indian Ford. The longitudinal four-cylinder that looked like an elegant tractor. We start off with a bike that looks like it came straight out of Peaky Blinders, but sounded like an orchestra. The Indian Ford was one of the most advanced and extravagant motorcycles of its time. It was equipped with a longitudinally mounted, air-cooled, inline four-cylinder engine with final chain drive and such smooth operation that it almost felt electric. In an era dominated by rough, vibrating V-twins, Indian went for something unthinkable, a motorcycle that behaved like a luxury car. Its engine displacement evolved from 1,265 to approximately 1,300 cubic centimeters, delivering progressive power and constant torque, ideal for effortless touring. While other bikes rattled your kidneys, the Indian 4 served you tea with cookies. It was a smooth, quiet, heavy, and extremely expensive motorcycle, built with premium finishes and designed for long distances. It wasn't made for speed. It was made to glide down the highway like an ocean liner. It had impressive stability for its time, the 1930s. But it also had a big problem. The engine generated a lot of heat in the rear cylinder. This led to constant design modifications, including the famous upside-down exhaust system in the last models. It was so advanced that the engineering of the time didn't know how to cool it down. Compared to Harley-Davidson, Harley was simple, tough, cheap, military. The Indian 4 was complex, refined, expensive, civilized. The Indian 4 wasn't for just anyone. It was a bike for doctors, businessmen, high-ranking police officers, people with money and good taste. The Indian 4 was the first to say, a motorcycle doesn't have to be aggressive, it can be elegant. Although it ceased production in 1942 due to World War II, its legacy was enormous. He introduced the concept of a premium touring motorcycle, something that would regain popularity decades later with the Goldwing. That's why many consider her the spiritual great-grandmother of modern touring motorcycles. The first motorcycle that behaved like a car, while still remaining a motorcycle. Number 9. Megola 640. A motorcycle with the engine in the front wheel. And common sense out the window, yes, you've heard that right. The engine was in the wheel. The Megola was one of the strangest motorcycles ever built, and probably the boldest. This remarkable German-engineered machine was famously equipped with a 5-cylinder, 640 cubic centimeter air-cooled rotary radial engine, which was uniquely positioned directly inside the front wheel. It wasn't connected by chain, drive shaft, or belt. The engine spun along with the wheel, like a World War I airplane engine. Literally, the wheel was the engine. It was launched in 1921, and it was a motorcycle with an invisible propeller. It had no clutch, no gearbox, and no conventional transmission. Acceleration was controlled only by the throttle. The more you twisted the throttle, the faster the wheel spun, and the engine with it. The simplicity was brutal. Engine wheel, direct power, zero mechanical losses, zero transmission maintenance. But that also meant something unsettling. There was really no way to disconnect the engine from the wheel. Why would anyone design something like that? Because in the 1920s, gearboxes were fragile. Chains would break. Reliable clutches didn't exist. And engineering was still exploring new paths. The Megola solved all those problems with an idea as simple as it was crazy. Eliminate everything that could break. It was a radical philosophy. Fewer parts, fewer failures. Although more scarce, but it had one terrifying detail. To come to a complete stop, you first had to turn off the engine. Yes, Literally. To stop, you turned off the bike and prayed. The weight of the 14-horsepower engine on the front wheel created a unique riding sensation. Extremely heavy steering, brutal inertia, incredible straight-line stability, and corners, well, with faith and hope. It was like riding a washing machine full of bricks, but at 120 kilometers per hour. Performance. For the time, it was science fiction. Top speed, 130 to 140 kilometers per hour. It sounded like a radial airplane engine. It vibrated like a tractor falling down a staircase. And you had to push start it or spin the wheel because there was no starter motor. The most incredible thing is that the Megola actually raced. It was used in speed and endurance races, proving that the idea, as absurd as it seemed, actually worked. It even won hill climbs and local events in Germany. Moto Guzzi V8, 1955. The most absurd engine ever put on a motorcycle. If you thought a V4 was over the top, Moto Guzzi said, let's make a V8, because if we're gonna lose our minds, let's do it with Italian style. In 1955, Moto Guzzi unveiled one of the wildest machines in history, the Otto Cylindri V8. Created for the World Speed Championship. While the rest of the world was racing with single and twin-cylinder bikes, Guzzi showed up with a V8 engine and a 500cc motorcycle. It was a masterpiece of clockwork, 8 tiny cylinders, a microscopic crankshaft, and a design so compact it seemed like black magic applied to Italian engineering. Its technical specs were impossible for the time. 500 cubic centimeters, 8 cylinders, and a 90-degree V, over 80 horsepower, 12,000 RPM, double overhead camshafts, 4 valves per cylinder, and 6 gears. While other bikes barely reached 7,000 RPM, the Guzzi screamed like a Formula One car. Its sound was metallic, sharp, and unique, so much so that many said it didn't sound like a motorcycle, but rather like a plane taking off down the straight. In terms of performance, it was a missile. It reached nearly 270 kilometers per hour and accelerated like nothing else of its time. But the reality was harsh. It was extremely expensive to build, fragile, hard to maintain, and incredibly complex. Every race was a gamble. If it finished, it made headlines. If it won, it became a legend. The engine would overheat, vibrate, and constantly break down. Because it was 30 years ahead of the available technology. The riders said you didn't ride it, you negotiated with it. It was fast, front-heavy, and dangerous in the corners, but absolutely mesmerizing on the straight. It competed against Ambi, Augusta, Gilera, and Norton, bikes that were slower but much more reliable. The Guzzi could humiliate him in pure speed, but almost never finished a race without mechanical issues. It didn't lose for lack of power. It lost because of too much ambition. Moto Guzzi abandoned the project in 1957, not for lack of talent, but for having crossed the line of what was possible. The V8 proved that imagination could outpace industry. It was the ultimate example of how engineering can be way ahead of its time. He taught that progress is not always safe, but it is necessary to push the limits of motorcycling. Number 7. Benelli 6. The first production motorcycle with 6 cylinders. In 1972, Benelli broke all the rules by unveiling the 6750, the first production motorcycle with an inline 6-cylinder engine. At a time when 4 cylinders already seemed over the top, Benelli decided to go even further to prove that Italy could also compete with Japan in technology. The 6 was not born to be practical or cheap. It was made to impress, to be the most sophisticated and extravagant bike of its time. Its engine was 750 cubic centimeters and 6 cylinders, delivered around 71 horsepower, with a smoothness never seen before. It used 6 individual carburetors and a multi-pipe exhaust that produced a sharp, clean, and harmonious sound. It was often compared to a symphony orchestra. It wasn't the fastest compared to rivals like the Honda CB750, but it was the most refined in terms of feel, with minimal vibrations and an absolutely unique mechanical personality. The problem was its complexity. It was heavy, expensive to manufacture, and difficult to maintain. The chassis and brakes didn't always live up to the engine, and its fuel consumption was high. On top of that, its price put it out of reach for the average user. It was a bike for collectors before the concept of a collector's motorcycle even existed, a work of engineering closer to luxury than to everyday practicality. Its impact was enormous. It opened the door to exotic multi-cylinder street bikes. Without the Benelli 6, there would be no Honda CBX1000 or Kawasaki Z1300. It proved that a motorcycle could be mechanical art, not just transportation. Today, it's a highly sought-after historical piece, a symbol of a time when brands dared to build unnecessary machines just to show how far engineering on 2 wheels could go. Number 6, DKW W2000 Wankel engine, the bike that looked like a Mazda RX-7 with handlebars. In 1973, DKW introduced the W2000, one of the few production motorcycles with a rotary Wankel engine. This type of engine didn't use pistons or valves, but rather a triangular rotor spinning inside an oval chamber, generating power continuously. It was a technology taken directly from the automotive world, similar to what Mazda would make famous with the RX-7. At the time, a motorcycle without pistons seemed like science fiction on 2 wheels. The main appeal of the Wankel engine was its extreme smoothness. Barely vibrated at all. It delivered power in a smooth, quiet, linear way, and had fewer moving parts than a conventional engine. There were no connecting rods, no valves, no camshaft. Everything rotated in a continuous motion, which made riding it feel strangely refined for a 1970s motorcycle, when most of them vibrated like unbalanced blenders. But the magic came at a price. Fuel consumption was high, the heat it generated was hard to control, and its reliability left much to be desired. The rotor seals wore out quickly, oil burned along with the fuel, and maintenance was complicated for shops used to piston engines. On top of that, its actual power didn't justify all that complexity, which made it an expensive, experimental, and not very practical bike for the average rider. The historical impact of the DKW W2000 was enormous. It showed that a motorcycle could use a completely different architecture from the traditional one. It was a rolling laboratory that proved not everything had to be pistons and connecting rods. Even though it was a commercial failure, today it's a highly valued museum piece, a symbol of a time when brands dared to experiment, with no fear of looking ridiculous or of financial losses. A rarity that paved the way, even if no one followed. Number 5. Honda Goldwing from 1974, the most famous touring bike in the world. In 1974, Honda launched the GL1000 Goldwing, a motorcycle that broke all the known rules. While the world remained obsessed with light and noisy bikes, Honda created a touring motorcycle with a flat 4-boxer engine and liquid cooling, something practically unheard of in mass-produced motorcycles. Its design aimed for smoothness, balance, and durability, drawn more inspiration from automotive engineering than from the rebellious culture of motorcycling. The boxer engine allowed for a lower center of gravity and almost completely eliminated vibrations. With about 999 cubic centimeters and nearly 80 horsepower, it wasn't a sport bike, but it was an untiring machine. The liquid cooling ensured stable temperatures on long trips, something crucial for endless journeys. While other bikes shook and wore out, the Goldwing kept running quietly and steadily, like a Swiss watch on wheels. Its behavior on the road was revolutionary, stable like a train, comfortable like an armchair, and reliable like an industrial engine. It wasn't designed for speed, but to cross countries without destroying the rider's back. Many described it as a bike that doesn't vibrate, it floats. It was so smooth that some traditional motorcyclists said it didn't feel like a motorcycle, but more like a car without doors. The historical impact was enormous. The Goldwing created the concept of modern touring. From it, motorcycles designed for traveling with luggage, a passenger, and real comfort were born. Over the years, it added a fairing, radio, intercom, and even reverse gear, becoming a living legend. The GL1000 was the seed of all current touring bikes. It proved that a motorcycle could be fast, comfortable, and everlasting, all at the same time. Number 4. Suzuki RG500, the V4 two-stroke for the street. In 1975, Suzuki launched the RG500, a bike that looked like it came straight out of the Grand Prix paddock. It used a two-stroke, four-cylinder engine in a square configuration, square 4, a very rare architecture for the street. Basically, it was two twin cylinders joined in a single block. Suzuki took the experience from their racing bikes and translated it into a street-legal machine, something unthinkable at the time. Its mechanics were pure madness. 500 cubic centimeters, two-stroke, big carburetors, and an explosive power delivery. There were no electronic aids, no traction control, no artificial smoothness. When it hit the sweet spot in the rev range, the RG500 turned into a missile. Many riders said you didn't ride it and you survived it. It was a street-legal bike, but with the soul of a killer. Its sound was part of its identity, sharp, metallic, and violent, like a GP bike that had escaped the track. Its lightness and power made it fearsome on the straights and dangerous in the corners if you didn't have a delicate touch. It didn't forgive mistakes. That's why it became a legend among experienced riders and a nightmare for the inexperienced. Its historical impact was enormous. The RG500 proved that racing technology could hit the streets without any filters. It inspired generations of two-stroke sport bikes and paved the way for models like the Gamma and other GP replicas. Today, it's a collector's item, a symbol of a wild era when bikes weren't safe, they were honest. An extreme work of Japanese engineering. Number 3. The Laverda V6, the Italian six-cylinder monster. The Laverda V6 was not just rare because it had 6 cylinders, it was rare because of how it was built. The engine was mounted transversely and took up almost the entire width of the bike, which forced them to design a completely new frame and a huge fairing to cover such a beast. It had 3 double carburetors, a multi-pipe exhaust system that looked like a church organ, and a layout designed more like a race car than a motorcycle. In tests, it reached over 280 kilometers per hour, which was absolutely insane for the late 70s. But the problem was that this performance came at a price. The whole setup weighed more than 280 kilos, generated brutal heat, and required very experienced riders just to keep it straight. In fast corners, it was unstable, and in slow corners, it was downright intimidating. It wasn't a bike to ride, it was a bike to survive. What's more, the B6 was one of the first bikes to show that the future wasn't about adding more cylinders, but about improving the chassis, suspension, and aerodynamics. Its sporting failure was just as significant as its technological success. It taught the entire industry that extreme complexity isn't always the right path. It was like building a Concorde to go grocery shopping. Impressive, loud, and completely unnecessary. Today, the Laverda V6 is one of the most valuable and rare motorcycles on the planet, not because it won races, but because it represents the exact moment when engineering became art and a little bit of madness. Number 2, Honda NS500, the 3-cylinder that beat the V4s. The Honda NS500 appeared in 1982 as a completely opposite response to the trend of V4 engines. Meanwhile, while Yamaha and Suzuki were betting on more cylinders and greater complexity, Honda launched a 2-stroke V3, 498 cubic centimeters, light and compact, designed by Irby Kanemoto and ridden by Freddie Spencer. It had less raw power than its rivals, but an agile chassis and perfect weight distribution that made it incredibly maneuverable in the corners. Its 3-cylinder engine delivered around 120 horsepower, but did so more progressively than the V4s, which allowed for earlier acceleration out of corners without losing traction. Additionally, being narrower and lighter, the NS500 was easier on the tires and required less physical effort from the rider over the course of a full race. Spencer pushed it to the limit and proved that you didn't need the most powerful bike to become world champion. And in first place, the MTT Y2K turbine. The motorcycle with a helicopter engine? The MTT didn't use pistons, connecting rods, or a crankshaft. It used a Rolls-Royce Allison helicopter turbine capable of spinning at over 50,000 RPM. It was literally a motorcycle powered by an airplane engine. It produced over 320 horsepower and an insane amount of torque from 0 RPM with no vibrations and a sound that made it seem like it was taken off from a runway. It didn't accelerate. It took off. It wasn't designed as a regular commercial product, but rather as an extreme demonstration of limitless engineering. Its automatic transmission, reinforced chassis, and aeronautical brakes were necessary to tame a beast that could theoretically exceed 400 kilometers per hour. It consumed fuel like a jet, cost more than a Ferrari, and required aviation-level maintenance. It was impossible to use as an everyday motorcycle. But that was never the intention. It was a functional mechanical sculpture. Its impact was immediate. It became the most famous motorcycle in the world because of how absurd the concept was. It appeared in movies, Guinness World Records, and museums. It proved that a motorcycle didn't need a conventional engine to exist. The MTT Y2K didn't change the industry, but it changed the collective imagination. It showed that a bike could be a hybrid between an aircraft and a superbike. As they said during its unveiling, this isn't a motorcycle, it's a jet with handlebars. These weren't just motorcycles, they were fearless ideas. Machines created in times when engineers didn't ask if it was possible. They asked how far they could go. Engines in the wheel, impossible V8s, jet turbines, pistons that weren't round, and architectures that seemed straight out of science fiction. Each one was a glorious mistake and a step forward in history. Today, motorcycles are more efficient, safer, and more logical. But none will ever have the creative madness of these legends again, because these bikes weren't made to sell millions. They were made to prove that imagination can also have wheels. And in the end, that's what we remember. Not the fastest, not the most practical, but the bravest. Because the future of motorcycling wasn't built just with horsepower. It was built with madness, genius, and a little bit of mechanical insanity. And if you want to learn about the fastest bikes, click on this video.